And so there you have it. A disappointing end to Pakistan's campaign. England coming out on top. This episode was meant to be a review of the Pakistan England match. But given that that match pretty much summed up Pakistan's entire World Cup campaign, the themes were pretty much the same. Nothing new that we saw. We thought we might as well make this into a broader episode about Pakistan's debacle, what I would say at the World Cup. I don't think it was anything less than that, despite a couple of flattering performances. I've got Moin here with me. Moin, good, bad, horrible. Where do you put this overall campaign as a whole?
Well, I put in ugly. It's the good, the bad, the ugly. I'm putting in
Yeah.
ugly. I think there are two things. If ever there was a match that summed up Pakistan's campaign, this was it. It had everything wrong about the Pakistan performance, about Pakistan's approach, all microcosmed into this one performance. So it's almost a fitting way to end, right? And when I look back into Pakistan's history all the way since 1975. Yes, okay, we won a few games, etc. But I would actually call this one off, barring '07, obviously, probably the most disappointing campaign. And that's not because, we only won 4 games, because I think in 2003 we only won 2 against Namibia and Holland. But I think it's the when you compare it to the expectation going into the World Cup, we were supposedly number one. We were supposedly one of the favorites, right? So against all that entire backdrop, I think this has to go down as the worst campaign other than 2007.
You say Pakistan won 4 games, but they've never lost 5 games at a World Cup either, which they did
Exactly.
in this World Cup. And again, at the end, you also have to look at the teams that they actually did beat: um, Netherlands, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, New Zealand. We all know how they won. So
I mean, exactly. And New Zealand, I don't even count that as a win. Sorry, fuckers, Aman fans and all. It was brilliant on that day, but without the rain, we wouldn't have won, right? So Pakistan ends up at number 5. It's almost a bit of a relief losing this game, right? So we don't get into this whole thing of, oh, we were so close yet so far. Gosh, वो एक wicket LBW decision आता हमारी तरफ. Gosh, no. You literally lost, and it's not even on net run rate, it's just sheer points, right? I mean, it was such a disappointing performance, to the point where I don't even think they cared. After they lost the first 2 wickets, they're like, ye to khatam ho gaya. We just want to just go home now, Babar Azam gets out the same way 5 times in this tournament. I mean, it's almost shocking. It's almost amateur, right? And then you've got the same issues with everybody else. They can't play spin, so I think Moeen Ali was quite successful today, and they just, in my opinion, all the good stuff that you saw. And this is why I said before, the peak was against Sri Lanka. Everything since then has been a downfall.
yeah, I completely agree. I think we touched upon inability to play spin. What I found really shocking, and I think it's been a consistent theme for the past few years actually, is whenever they're playing wrist spin, again, we've touched on Pakistan struggles with wrist spin, but just basics, they can't even pick the wrong one. I mean, Adil Rashid took 2 wickets of, pretty basic wrong
Ordinary.
ones, right?
Yeah.
Saud Shakil, who's supposed to be a great player of spin, Shadab was supposed to be a good player of spin. He's a leg spinner, for God's sake.
He
He
knows what's
wants to,
coming.
and that's a classic leg spinner's googly dismissal, right? I mean, how can you not read that? I just don't really understand. I mean, it's so basic. You'll see a lot of the Indian batsmen, even the Australians, they can pick up the googly and they can whack it over mid wicket for 6. But these guys, I just don't get what the preparation has been. Look, again, we can go into inflated rankings and false sense of hope that we're the number one team in the world, blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, you have to put in the hard work, you have to put in the effort, and not rely on excuses. The
Yeah.
other thing I would say, obviously, is a lot of people would say, "Oh, Naseem Shah was injured," and look, he was injured before the World Cup. And if you look at it, all of the top 4 teams all the teams that have ended up in the top 4, India lost Hardik Pandya, probably their biggest
our pick for man of the series, our pick for man of the tournament. He's the man. He makes up two people in that team, right? Then we take South Africa, right? Henrik Nokia. I mean, exact same role as Naseem Shah plays, if not a bigger role. And New Zealand, let's just take a second to think about New Zealand's issues. I mean, that freak incident with Kane Williamson. You half your bowlers injured. You could barely field a balanced 11. I mean,
Exactly.
uh, it's Naseem Shah is no longer an excuse. Let's put it that
Yeah.
way. And you should be
Exactly.
good enough to have a backup bench of at least fast bowlers given your Pakistan.
Yeah. And the irony is the people who've actually played in place, and Naseem Shah, Hassan Ali, and Wasim, they've probably been your better bowlers at the end of the end of the day,
Yeah,
right? Hassan Ali
yeah,
started off very well. He lost form towards the end, but he's Hassan Ali. And Wasim, even in the England game, he was okay till the last couple of overs, and he took a few wickets. At least he could reverse the ball pretty well. So, look, and your two kind of short shots, Haris and Shaheen, have been the two worst performers, and
yeah.
of course, along with the spinners. So you can't use lack of Naseem. Even Australia, you mentioned people. Australia had Travis Head missing for a big part of the tournament. Look, so every team has had injury issues and everything, and
And
look,
sorry, I
we're
just
just
make
all
one
middle.
point about Australia. Just one point. It's not just
Yeah,
about injury, right? It's also form. Adam Zampa was horrible in the first two games. We thought, oh my god, finally we have someone to compare with Shadab, right? And then just see how that guy is now the highest wicket taker. If Australia go all the way, he's my one of my picks for man of the tournament. And that guy has literally done it, right? And here you have our players who can't find form midway through a tournament. They can't find any semblance. Today, Shadab wasn't so bad, which makes me think that he just can't handle pressure games. Um, and yeah, it's just look, you have to accept two things, okay? And hopefully now, if you didn't accept in 2019, you accept it now. It is you are 10 years behind the limited overs game. Okay, yes, you've had success with T20, but that has been on the back of some individual success here and there. But you are behind the curve because you do not produce enough power hitters. You don't know how to keep strike rotating, and that's really hurting you in the longer limited overs form of the game. The second is you have to accept that there is a quality deficit, right? You know, you have world class players. I get it, right? And everyone's, oh, but we have Babar Azam, we have Shiny. So does every single team in the top 10, right? Just having two world class players doesn't make you a top team or a world number one team, right? I mean, it's the entire collective unit. And to be honest, I just think the planning has been really poor. We don't play another one day international till November 2024, by the way, so don't expect any miracles for in 4 years' time if this is the level of prioritization we give the format.
well, not 4 years. I'd say 2 years time because you've got the Champions Trophy in
Oh
Pakistan
yes.
coming up. But the
Oh
problem
yeah.
is, the preparations, everything are going to be completely skewed because the focus would be on the T20 World Cup in 7-8 months time. And look, on paper, at least this team looks okay for the T20 format. We'll see how that translates into actual performances. But the other thing that is slightly weird, and I think this is the Babar Azam approach of, oh, at least we tried hard, and not kind of being brutally honest and harsh about the players, especially in the batting. If you look at it on an individual basis, all the batsmen have done enough to say, oh, this guy didn't have a terrible tournament. Abdullah
Exactly.
Shafiq, even Imamul Haq, Fakhar Zaman, Babar Azam himself, 450s, whatever. Rizwan started off pretty well. Saud Shakil had a couple of good performances. Iftikhar. So Agha Salman got a 50 as well. So the thing is, and you want changes, and you want to have new players coming in. And but the problem is, and the problem where this current unit doesn't take big decisions is, who do you end up dropping? Do you end up completely dropping the likes of Rizwan and Saud Shakil and Iftikhar and maybe Abdullah Shafiq as well if you get in completely new people? So it's very difficult to see what they do next. You talk about someone like a Saim Ayub who comes in on the basis of his limited performances, but then what do you do, and what's the way forward from
Well,
here?
I think the first thing you have to look at people's ages, right? People's ages. Fakhar Zaman's 33. Will he make it till
Yeah.
the next World Cup? 37? That's a question. Okay. I have nothing. I know everyone thinks I probably have something against the guy. I really don't. Okay. But it is a question. Okay. If he thinks he can deliver, fine. But I think Pakistan's issue is not so much about, or the fact that, they've done just about enough. It's about
Yeah,
roles, right? You have
yeah,
one too many anchors. I mean, more than one too many anchors, right? If you have Abdullah Shafiq, Fakir Zaman, okay, you have Babar and Rizwan. But then I think, look, so Shakil, I thought, yes, he had more potential. You have to just cut him a bit of slack here because he wasn't in the one day frame at all for the
yeah,
last 4 years, barring that one meaningless series that even Babar Azam forgot about in England. So that guy didn't really have much time to develop his game. Okay, I have some sympathy there. But you need to think about your where you're lacking. You're lacking in the lower middle order when it comes to enforcing an innings. Okay. So there's Mohammad Haris who's sitting there. Right now, you have a choice whether you want to groom him. There's a
yeah,
question of Saim Ayub, whether you want to keep him at the top order or groom him as a number 4 or number 5 and bring Rizwan a little lower. These are questions you need to be asking yourself. And then lower down, look, if the card, again, I have no idea what the guy's real age is, so I'm not even going to pretend. But he needs to decide if he's going to be there in 4 years' time. And if he is, then he needs an all rounder around him and a pace bowling all rounder, right? So your top seven needs to have at most two anchors, Babar
yeah,
and either Abdullah Shafiq or Rizwan. And then maybe Rizwan needs to take a more aggressive role. But everybody in Pakistan defaults into the anchor role because that they consider to be the way to preserve their spot for the next five
yeah,
games. And you can't have that culture anymore. You have to say, actually, if you score 40 of 60, you're likely to be dropped, right? It's better
yeah,
to score maybe 30 of like 12 or something like that and at least have shown intent than have a risk-free 40 of 60. You know what I mean? Like there needs to be a change in culture, like England, where you say, you know what, I'm tired of these random average stat padding scores.
yeah,
I am looking at strike rates and I'm looking at intent. And then
yeah,
you'll suddenly see that people will do some things differently. That's why I thought the 400 game, I wish we saw all of it. I know we would have lost, but we've lost anyways. It doesn't matter. I wish we saw all of it. I guarantee you, we would have actually put on a good fight. We would have lost, but we would have put on a good fight because everybody would have known you have no choice but to show intent, and they will
yeah,
suddenly find they can all. Oh, they can do it. Maybe not as well as a Klaassen or Miller, but they can still do it. But it's the fear
yeah.
of being dropped.
Yeah, and I mean that's been the problem of Pakistan for many a year. But I guess you discussed the batting and the approach to batting. I think the other thing is, you mentioned the top seven is Babar Azam and his role as captain question mark, or is it a time for a change, as far as that's concerned? And then the problem actually becomes, okay, if not Babar, then who?
I mean, it's Pakistan, unfortunately, have not developed good thinkers of the game. Okay. And that's because you don't have a very strong domestic circuit. So you don't have people who actually, they have to learn on the job. Look at Australia. The reason they all come and become really good captains from the get go is because their domestic structure is so competitive, right? So that's almost good practice. Babar Azam, I think we all know he either should step down. I hope he steps down and not removed. He should stay on as batter. But then everybody talks about how actually his captaincy hasn't affected his batting. Even he tries to say it. But let's be honest here. It has affected his batting. If not in the scores, but in his approach to the game, because he feels like he has the weight of his team's shoulders. Wait, the weight of his team on his shoulders. And he does. So whenever he's chasing a massive score, barring the New Zealand game, I found him to be a bit shell shocked, right?
Yeah,
He's someone who just needs to focus on batting, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. Sachin Tendulkar. So many players in the past, some great players, had to focus just on their batting. Question is who else? And there's a temptation with Rizwan as your default. Sorry, Shadab. I'm sorry, Shadab is no longer part of the mix because I don't think his
yeah,
space is even. He may keep his space for a bit, but he's not to be taken for granted. So
yeah,
I think it's Rizwan or Shaheen, right? And
yeah.
your question is, will Rizwan give you a big change in mentality that you need, or will it be more of the same but with poor DRS reviews? or or you have Shaheen, who I think seems young, he's raw. I'm all for bowler captains. I think our most successful captains have been bowlers. They end up being more aggressive. The
Yeah.
only issue with a bowling captain is they're more injury prone. And when they're more injury prone, that brings a bit more instability at the top rank. Okay. And they also tend to underbowl or overbowl themselves. So there are little things to think about there. But these are your two options, the way I see it.
Yeah, completely agree. I don't see any other change. Shalaf Khan probably before the tournament, but I think given his place
No.
is under question. Definitely, I think we've gone through a big phase where we had people captaining the team with their place not secure in the team. And unfortunately, we don't have the likes of Klaassen and Miller to dig us out of holes like South Africa. But
Exactly. Okay.
so I'm so sorry to bring Bavuma into this, but anyways, and the other thing about Bauer's captaincy, and some people will be like, oh, but his record and his stats as captain are really good. He's beaten Kohli's record as captain. Blah blah blah. Look, you can point to all the bilateral series you want, and he's done well against lower quality opposition. Even you can argue maybe in South Africa he did well against a decent team, fine. But at the end of the day, he had five tournaments in the white ball, T20 and ODIs, two Asia Cups, two World Cups. Didn't he personally perform pretty poorly in four of those five? I think his performances, probably the first World Cup, T20 World Cup in 21 was the only one where he actually did well.
Well, that's only his first game, right? If you actually take out that first game,
Yeah,
he didn't do anything against New Zealand. Against Afghanistan, he wasn't great. So, and
yeah,
then we had two weaker teams. So I actually think he hasn't done well, barring that one India game that we all
yeah.
remember. He hasn't been that good as captain in big tournaments.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, and I mean the Asia Cup. Come on, at least get to two finals at least. You lost to Sri Lanka twice, right? Okay, you got to one final and you gave it away after having that
50 for
under
5,
control.
yeah.
Exactly. So look, five tournaments. I don't think many two captains, especially in the recent past, have even had that much of have had that much leeway. Okay, fine. You got to if you got to four finals, or even if you did in England where you got to two finals, or you won one trophy, or you won two trophies and got knocked out in the first round in Belarus.
Exactly.
That's fine. At least
Exactly.
you've won something, right?
Exactly. That's the point. Like, even let's be honest, 2022 World Cup in Australia, we got lucky. He
Yeah,
was destined to be removed after that World Cup. We were going to crash out of the group
yeah,
stages. It would have been the biggest upset ever because Pakistan looked a good T20 team, right? We lost those two initial games. He got lucky and he got
yeah,
saved, right? So, you have to really break it down. And I just don't think that Babar Azam has it in him, right? We've talked about his captaincy in a lot of detail in our past episodes, but to just summarize, he is always behind the game. He doesn't sense those moments, those precise moments. You could be better for 45 out of 50 overs and still lose the game. That is cricket. You need to know what moments you need to win. And he just does not inspire and he does not make the right decisions at the right time. He's a bit late into realizing the significance of certain passages of play. And I think, you know, people compare captaincy in cricket to like playing chess, right? Especially in tests. You
yeah,
have to play the long game. You have to understand and realize that actually it's not just bowling changes. It's little things like, fielding positions, like blocking angles that
yeah,
the batter takes particular liking to an innings. And sometimes you can't prepare for that. Sometimes it just depends on the day. Oh, this guy is just, you know, playing behind square quite a bit. Let's dry up those runs, and just think outside the box. And I think with a team like Pakistan, where most players haven't played a lot of Test cricket, unfortunately, bowlers cannot captain themselves and think for themselves much either. So that
yeah,
makes the importance of a captain that much more significant. And more so for a team like Pakistan, who relies on its bowling to bring them success. In batting, he's the captain's in the back, right? But
yeah.
bowling, it's really your bowling is sometimes only as good as your captain, right? In terms of marshalling them and vice
Yeah.
versa.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that this World Cup has proven it, right? In all nine games, I don't see a single game, even the Bangladesh one, where you felt like the bowlers had control of the run rate,
Exactly.
let alone the wickets. Every game, even if you look at the
Exactly.
power play totals, it was insane. I've never seen Pakistan this bad. Not even once. You'd say after the power play, the team is 40 for one, or even 40 for no loss after 10 overs. You feel like okay, the bowlers have done a good job,
Yeah.
line and length, control the run rate. It was 70, 18 for no loss, 60 for no loss, and getting worse. So yes, I do blame Babar for that. But I think the other thing to consider also, and this is probably where Babar needed help when you realize that he doesn't have it in him, but he's still your captain. And this is where the likes of Grant Bradburn and Mickey Arthur and the rest of the kind of supporting crew, they also haven't stepped up, to be honest. And I think that's also been a problem. Okay, there is an issue of lack of stability, and this whole debate around foreign coaches and they don't spend much time in Pakistan and all of that, which is difficult. I think over time you also need that stability, and support, and that's also probably been an issue. And that's why I think probably it's also time for not just the captaincy to change, but also to look at what the coaching setup is going to be. I'm not going to get into the debate of foreign coaches versus local coaches, because we've seen both and we've had mixed results with either. But the only thing I would say is whoever it is, even if it's a foreign coach, you have to have some sort of an agreement where that coach is going to spend 11, 12 months, 11, maybe 11 and a half months a year in Pakistan, and not have like a ad hoc series by series thing where that coach just goes away or does Zoom coaching or whatever.
Yeah,
So
I
there
mean, I
needs to
think
be
the other issue is also, let's face it, right? There's so much instability at the top of PCB that no
yeah,
one wants to accept the coaching role because they don't know how much job security they're gonna have, right? And frankly, they won't have much. So it's a bit embarrassing to see that, right? You'll
yeah,
see our results have gone down ever since there was like massive changes at the top, right, of the PCB, the chairman and stuff like that, and and it'd be foolhardy to think that that did not have an impact. But I thought that segued quite nicely. We talked about captaincy and marshalling bowlers, and for a team like Pakistan, you need a good captain because your biggest strength is bowling, right? Compared to likes of India and others who also rely on their batting traditionally. I know this World Cup's different, but good segue into bowling, right?
yeah,
We keep thinking about, well, where are Pakistan's holes, right? And in every World Cup, there will be three or four, mainly on the batting side.
yeah,
This time, they've been more on the bowling side. If I just bring them down for you, on the batting side, yes, we talked about strike rotation and we've talked about their ability to, or their inability to play spin, right? And
yeah,
also your big six hitting, right?
yeah,
Pretty much everything. And then on the bowling side, where do you start? You don't have new ball bowlers. You have really bad spinners, right? Ineffective. You are unable to bowl six good balls at a stretch, or even five good balls at a stretch. And then you've got fielding lapses and questionable captaincy to top it all off. So where do you start, right? Your bowling was your biggest strength. You had posters of these three, the poster boys, the new Wasim, Waqar, Shoaib, and really, you've seen the results are there for you, right? Let's not glorify wins against smaller teams. Against the bigger teams, you did not succeed for a prolonged period of time. So,
yeah.
what do you make of it? Where do you start, right?
Look, again, the first thing is you need to accept that you have a problem. They need to understand that these are problems. This wasn't like, oh, this was a one-off, or we did well in one match and the bowling still has it, or we got India out for 260 in the Asia Cup and just
Exactly.
rely on that performance. You need to accept that this is a problem and then look to fix it. Look, personnel wise, Shaheen and I think Naseem, once he comes back in a few months, I think you still need to rely on those two. Haris Rauf, unless he plays at least 10 to 12 first class matches, 4 day matches, and performs in those, I do not see a place for him in this, at least in the ODI setup. Mohammad Wasim, yes, I think he's done well enough, but you need to use him sparingly and probably just at the depth, not with the new ball, but have that backup. And also, like you mentioned in previously, you need to have a pace bowling all rounder who can play that role as a cover up, so you can have that cushion, and you don't have to go. And if the conditions suit, you can go with two fast bowlers and a seam up all rounder. And again, the same thing with your spinners. You cannot pick spinners on the base of T20 for base of T20
And their
form,
batting. And their
and,
batting.
and their batting. You need to pick. Okay, Abrar, he needs to be given some time. You play him list A games, play first class games, play him test matches, and see how he does, and probably groom him to become a one day bowler. The counter argument people will put forward is look at the top wicket takers of this World Cup, and you've got Zampa, Madhushanka, who are like traditional ODI bowlers, and I think they're both different circumstances. Zampa has a very good bowling attack supporting him, which really does help, especially for a spinner, because when you have the pace bowlers drying up the runs in the beginning, which is kind of the Shahid Afridi Mohammad Hafiz method, right, where they used to get wickets when the
Triangle.
batsmen were
Yeah.
like exactly. Um, And Madhuchanka, he's been good, but he's also gone for a lot of runs. So again, it's not the perfect example. Whereas if you look at the other bowlers like Bumrah and stuff, they've taken wickets, but they've also been very very economical, and that's I think the balance that you need to find, which
Completely agree. Now I'm gonna just put one matter to bed. Sorry, Pakistanis, pace is not pace, yaar. Okay, it's not just pace. Okay, in today's modern game, it's as much the lack of pace as it is pace. Okay, gone are the days where pace. Oh my god, like
can I just give one example of why pace is
please.
not pace here, which is from today's game. Haris Rauf, 91.5 miles per hour. Joe Root stands up, goes down on one knee and flicks him over.
Joe Root, Joe Root, who's been so out of form this entire World Cup. He's not even a big six hitter. It is shocking. Exactly that, right? And in Pakistan, you're obsessed with pace. You've got pace academies in everything. That's the only infrastructure you have.
Yeah.
You have no infrastructure for spinners. Where are your spin academies? There's such disincentivization to have spinners, and there's such disincentivization to have bowlers like Hassan Ali, like fast, medium type bowlers, right? Because everybody thinks if they don't have the pace, they're not going to make it. I'm not saying pace is bad. Pace is very good. It can be a weapon, but you need to get the basics right. We this is an issue. We have glorified the likes of all these great fast bowlers because we've heard stories about Imran Khan telling Waqar, just bowl fast, just bowl fast. I don't care what you do, just bowl fast.
Yeah.
Look, you have to accept that these are all stories. There are more nuances to them than that get told, right? Because people just tell the sound bites that work, right? It was a much more nuanced message, I'm sure, that Imran Khan gave Waqar, firstly. And secondly, the game has evolved, right? Now a captain will be saying, no, actually, you need to bowl fast, but you need to have a good slow ball, and you need to have good off cutters or leg cutters or whatever you prefer. It's not just pace, right? And I don't want you to go for like 70, 80 runs. I don't want you to bowl wides and no balls because now you've got free hits in today's world. Like there's so much more complexity. And anyway, so I think you need to find a good spinner. You need Haris. Sorry, you're not one day, or you're a T20 bowler at this rate. So then and you need to go back to the drawing board and build your bench strength across the board, right? And you need a pace bowling all rounder who can also hit a few sixes. I'm sorry, Hassan Ali, Shaheen Afridi, Mohammad Wasim, they are not all rounders. Stop making them number 8 batters. They're not. Okay.
Despite what Haris Rauf and Naseem did today.
Yeah, please. Yeah, I mean, it just went to show how easy the pitch was, and we just completely bottled it as batters. All right. Um, but look, ultimately, the way I see it, if you win a World Cup, what does that mean? That means you are a beacon, an example for other countries to follow, right? You are the example country in terms of cricket, the team, the performance, the infrastructure, everything around it. Now, I'm going to ask all Pakistanis watching, do you really think the Pakistan team, the Pakistan cricket board, and the infrastructure is an example? And if the answer is no, then that means that if we were to win the World Cup, if we did win it, it would be in spite of all these issues, not because of them,
Exactly.
right? And what that tells you is actually the odds are against you, right? The odds on you're probably not going to win. It'll go to a team that has, or that can be an example. Australia, India now. Okay. So there should not be much disappointment. I know it's tough at the moment, but there shouldn't be much disappointment. You just need to know that the minute you actually improve the mahal at home,
Yeah.
only then will you achieve consistent results. And until then, the finals that you win or the finals that you get to through Kudrat Ka Nizam will be just that. It'll be Kudrat Ka Nizam. Don't read too much into it. It'll be in spite of everything rather than because of everything. Okay. So, on that really somber note, I'm going to say, Zahid, the World Cup is over. The band aid's been ripped off. A fair result at number 5. And look, you've got the 4 best teams in the semi final. And let's hope that this time there will be a bit of a change. Thank you, Zahid.
Thank you.